You don't wake up one day and decide to manipulate people. It starts much earlier than that, quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. It begins the moment you realize that the emotional weather in the room matters more than your own internal climate. When you learn to scan faces instead of feelings, when your nervous system memorizes tone shifts the way others memorize song lyrics, you become good at reading people, too good. You sense disappointment before it's spoken, anger before it's admitted, withdrawal before it happens, and somewhere along the way you discover a dangerous truth. If you adjust yourself fast enough, deeply enough, cleverly enough, you can prevent loss. So you do. You soften your needs. You pre-edit your emotions. You manage conversations like fragile negotiations, not because you're controlling, but because you're afraid. Here's the paradox. The same emotional intelligence that once kept you safe now keeps you trapped. What saved you as a child, awareness, adaptation, emotional labor, becomes the very thing that sabotages intimacy as an adult. Because when connection is built on strategy instead of truth, closeness becomes a performance, and love starts to feel like work. Emotional manipulation is often misunderstood. We imagine it as malicious intent, lies, gaslighting, domination. But psychologically, manipulation often begins as a trauma-adapted relational strategy. Let's name what's really happening. First, hypervigilance. This is a nervous system state where safety depends on constant monitoring. Your brain learns that unpredictability equals danger, so the amygdala stays alert. The prefrontal cortex works overtime, calculating outcomes. The mind loops endlessly. What do they feel? What do they want? Who do I need to be? This isn't personality. This is conditioning. Second, the fawning response. Beyond fight, flight, or freeze, trauma psychology recognizes fawn, the urge to appease, charm, or emotionally manage others to stay safe. Fawning creates people who anticipate needs, overfunction emotionally, confuse harmony with connection. Manipulation here isn't coercion, it's preemptive self-erasure. Third, attachment adaptations. Inconsistent caregiving often leads to anxious or disorganized attachment. The child learns, I am not loved for who I am. I am loved for how well I regulate others. So connection becomes transactional, love becomes conditional, and emotional expression becomes strategic. You don't say what's true, you say what works. Over time, the brain wires itself around relational survival, not authenticity. That's the architecture behind emotional manipulation. Here's the cost no one talks about. When you constantly manage emotions, yours and everyone else's, you lose access to innocence. You don't get to be spontaneous. You don't get to be messy. You don't get to be unfiltered. Every interaction carries weight. Every word is calculated. Every silence feels dangerous. This is the grief of the emotionally intelligent child. You were mature long before you were safe. Carl Jung once said, the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But there's another burden, the unlived life of the self. You sacrifice authenticity for belonging, truth for connection, need for acceptance. And beneath it all is a simple, devastating fear. If I stop managing, I will be abandoned. So even joy is monitored, even love is measured, even rest feels unsafe. You become excellent at connection, but terrible at intimacy, because intimacy requires risk, and risk once meant pain. This doesn't disappear with age, it evolves. You might recognize yourself here. In relationships, you subtly steer emotions, choosing words to prevent conflict rather than express truth. In arguments, you over-explain, not to clarify, but to control outcomes. At work, you become indispensable, yet resentful, giving more than asked, then feeling unseen. With boundaries, you hint instead of stating them, hoping others will figure it out. Internally, you feel disconnected from desire, unsure what you actually want. Emotionally, you feel responsible for everyone's comfort except your own. These are not flaws. They are coping strategies frozen in time. Healing begins with one radical act, witnessing without judgment, not fixing, not shaming, not intellectualizing, just noticing the pattern and saying, this once kept me safe. It doesn't have to anymore. Unlearning isn't removal, it's updating. Healing emotional manipulation isn't about becoming less intelligent. It's about becoming less afraid. Practices like inner child reparenting teach the nervous system a new truth. I can be honest and still be loved. Shadow work helps you reclaim the parts of yourself that were buried for safety, anger, desire, need, and most importantly, healing requires choosing softness without strategy. That means saying no without justification, expressing feelings without editing, letting others manage their own emotions. You will feel guilt. That's normal. You are not becoming selfish. You are becoming real. The goal isn't to stop caring. The goal is to stop disappearing. As psychologist Alice Miller wrote, the truth about our childhood is stored in our body, not our mind. And when the body finally feels safe, the mind can let go of control. You were never manipulative. You were adaptive. And now you are allowed to be whole. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs language for what they're feeling. Subscribe not for answers, but for remembrance. Because healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about welcoming back what was never allowed to stay. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. Thanks for watching.